Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're in the world. This is Augie of the Blago Blabber Podcast. I'd like to welcome everyone to another session, another episode, whatever you want to call it. When January rolled around, I kind of said I was going to come on here maybe every 2 weeks and talk about some of the football transfers that were happening, because to the soccer fans who know, the winter transfer market was open for business. That didn't happen because I thought that there would be more purchases, so to say, I guess. I know January is usually, a time when a lot of teams who are desperate loan out a lot of players or bring in a lot of players on loan, whether it's teams that are struggling to stay up or teams in lower tiers that are trying to move up. So I didn't talk about it just because I didn't think that there were that many purchases or players bought that would make a big difference or big splashes or anything like that. So I thought I'd take this time just to kind of talk about Arsenal and what they did today. They actually did quite a bit, and I'm I'm happy with the moves. I think they loan out all the players that I guess it's kind of their last ride, so to say, to kind of prove themselves to the club before I think they're eventually sold off. So I think the club used this transfer window to kind of loan out some of those players, and I'm talking about Ainsley, Maitland-Niles, Joe Willock, and then obviously offloading Ozil. Mustafi's contract terminated. We already talked about, I think I talked about Kolasinac before, but I kind of want to start off with Joe Willock because I think there was a lot of hope for him at the start of this season. I would say, at least I don't know about other people, but I didn't know where he would kind of slot in. Like, what's his position? Like, he's a midfielder, but is he a defensive midfielder? Is he attacking midfielder? Because he doesn't really have too many defensive characteristics and doesn't have too many attacking characteristics. So it's kind of like, he's kind of like I don't want to compare him to Xhaka, but kind of like that type of player. Although I think Willock is a little bit faster. And I think when the season started, I didn't really have him. I maybe had him as like a second string guy behind, at that time, I guess, Guendouzi and actually third behind Guendouzi and Guendouzi, Xhaka, and probably Ceballos. I thought he was going to get more playing time than Elneny, but Elneny started off the season very well. And to be full credit to Elneny, when he's been asked to start games this season and play, he's been actually pretty damn good. I'm happy for him because he has been at the club for a long time and stuff like that. People always like to jump on him, and I hate to see that with any player. But I kind of expected more of him. I think there was a stat, something like last year he featured in the most amount of matches, although a lot of them were just he came on as a sub. But yeah, so there is some promise there. He's still very young. I mean, he's 21 years old, something like that. So he could still have a future at the club. And I hope this loan does him good. I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know what Newcastle's team is currently constructed like. But I expect them to get, for Newcastle to play him quite a bit, or Steve Bruce to use him quite a bit, because they are kind of in that relegation zone, although the three teams that are at the bottom are really at the bottom. I think 7 points clear of like fourth from behind, so they have a lot of work to do, although Sheffield United has played a lot better, which doesn't really mean anything, and I'm still not counting them out, by the way. So Sheffield still has played better, and Newcastle is kind of in that zone there. And they beat, who was it? I think it was Crystal Palace 2-3 days ago. So hopefully he gets the playing time. I mean, I don't think Crystal Palace or Newcastle would have brought him in if, they weren't really going to use him that much. So I expect him to play quite a bit. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is interesting to me, and I think he's interesting to a lot of fans. He's 23, so he's a little bit older than Willock. But I think we got ahead of ourselves this season. I think we got fooled, and this isn't a discredit to Maitland-Niles because he played very well towards the tail end of last season, and in the cup run he had a few really good games. But like he got called up to the England squad, and all of a sudden we thought he would be a player that Arteta would never take out of the starting lineup. Like he would be the first name on the sheet. It's what I felt like, and I bought the hype as well. And with Bayern struggling a little bit last season, and even this season, I think a lot of people thought that he was going to have a permanent starting spot. And then, I see a lot of tweets like, what happened to the Ainsley Maitland-Niles who, played really well towards the end of the last season, who was called up to England. Don't let the fact that he got called up to the England squad distract you from, how do I say this, from masking some of the issues that he has as like a football player. Like, don't get me wrong, Ainsley Maitland-Niles can play a bunch of positions well. Which position does he play really well? Like, at which position does he stand out? Because I don't think he has one. And honestly, it's not to a fault of his own, I wouldn't say. And I hate using this comparison because he's a totally different player in like different position stuff. But like Phil Jones at United was thrown around at like 4 or 5 different positions. Like he was a center back, he was I think a right back, he was a defensive midfielder. Like at some point you have to develop these players at a particular position. You can't just keep throwing them around. So when he got called up to the England squad, Ainsley Maitland-Niles not, Phil Jones. Like in football now, every national team, I would say, maybe not every, but like 90% of teams call up that one player. Some teams have more than one who can play multiple positions. And I'm not talking about a guy who's a center back who could also play left back and right back. I'm talking about a guy like Ainsley Maitland-Niles who could play right back, who could play left back, who could play a CDM, who could play a central midfielder, who could play a right wing. He could play all over the pitch. And it's good to have guys like that just in case, guys get injured and you need an emergency fill at that position, and you need like an energy guy, a guy who could get down the flanks, a guy who could defend a little bit. Like Ainsley's that guy, but as a full-time starter, he has to develop at a particular position. You can't just keep throwing him around at every position. And with West Brom, to be fair, they're struggling immensely this season. He'll probably play whatever position it is that he wants to play. So if that's central midfield, he'll probably play there. But I think that, just like everyone, they're just going to kind of throw him around everywhere and kind of hope for the best. But it's important to develop him at a particular position because he's 23. He's not an 18-year-old kid anymore. Like when Saka came into the squad, he was like a right wing back. And everyone started moaning, why is he playing there? That's not his position. But, as he slowly learned the game, he got moved up, and now he's one of the best young players in the league, and he's a great winger, and he's just fun to watch. And by no means am I comparing Saka to Ainsley Maitland-Niles, but it's what I'm trying to say. So Ainsley Maitland-Niles is a great guy who can use. He's gonna be, if he does play for a big club, like if he does come back and Arsenal does keep him, he's gonna be a guy who comes off the bench. He's not a guy who's gonna start, I don't think. And that's I think that's, like, a lot of fans love him because he's one of our own, but he's got to get some minutes under his belt, and I think this loan is good for him. I think he's going to play quite a bit. So yeah, hopefully he does well. Hopefully he comes back and he's ready to contribute to the club. So Mustafi obviously got his contract terminated. So I remember talking to my friend Alex, like when we first signed him. Alex is a United fan. He obviously listens to the show, of course. He's a United fan, and I remember him saying, I really wanted him at United, and damn, you guys got a really good player. And I was kind of skeptical. I was like, oh man, I believe we signed him, was it the Euro season or something like that? And I hate signing players off like 2 good months or whatever it is, a month and a half of good football. But we did, and he just didn't. He had his games, but for the price tag that we bought him for, he was supposed to be like a player who would contribute for the next like 4, 5, 6 years at a high level, which he didn't do. And ultimately, we could have cut our losses even earlier. But yeah, he's gone now, and I'm happy with the center back core that we have. Like, there's still Gabriel there. We have David Luiz, we have Pablo Mari, we have Holding. So there's 4, which should be enough, barring, like, we're not going to be with these 4 for, a year and a half. It's only for the next 4 or 5 months until the season's over. So barring any major injuries, I think we're okay at that position. But yeah, the Gabriel situation is kind of, I talked about this when I released my match recap from the United match. Like, Gabriel hasn't featured since that COVID thing and the red card, I believe. There's something going on there for sure, because there's no way he was our best defender and he won back-to-back Players of the Month, and then all of a sudden he can't even play. Like, he's not even in the starting lineup. Like, I get it, you got to ride momentum, but you paid a lot of money for this kid. And I get that David Luiz has been pretty good, and so has Rob Holding, depending on who you ask in the fan base. To some people, he's either really good or he's really bad. I think he's been good. The season as a whole, I'm talking about. So it depends who you ask, but I mean, there's something's going on there. And like, when Arteta puts his foot down, like, it usually stays down. Like, look what happened with Guendouzi. Look what happened with Ozil. Look what happened with some of the other players. So I don't really like this, but let's see what happens. And the whole Martinelli thing, like subbing him off, it wasn't a precaution or anything. It was just tactical, from what I've heard after the game. And you're bringing on Willian, a guy who's struggled, although Willian played decent. Like, he was actually really good compared to how bad he's been this season. So that's another, I think, talking point that you can have there. But going forward, I think, and the Reece Nelson news, apparently, Arsenal, according to Athletic, Arsenal wanted to loan him out as well, but they wanted a loan fee back, as well as whatever team that he was going to. They wanted to split the weekly wages with them, and no one was biting on that, so no luck. So that's very interesting too. But going forward, and I think, honestly, Eddie and Ketia would have been either sold or loaned out this window. But I think maybe, and I know Aubameyang is back, but I think his personal issues and the fact that Lacazette, picked up a little bit of a knock in the last game against Manchester United, I think they kind of maybe shifted the team's focus on, like, just to kind of keep him, because the lack of players up top. And although you can say, Martinelli could play up there, who else can play up there? That's about it. Willian maybe as a false 9, but there's guys that could play. I remember people even saying, Pepe, since he's been struggling a little bit, could probably play up top, and I think he played that a little bit with his former club. So that's something to experiment with. But that's, if we don't have Aubameyang and Lacazette, then I think maybe you stick Nicolas Pepe up there. I wouldn't do it with both of them healthy. The only thing I don't think we really addressed this transfer window, and I know you can't address all your, concerns and stuff like that, is probably a backup left back for Tierney, because Tierney is starting to pick up a lot of nagging injuries since he's been in Arsenal, and I'm a little bit worried, to say the least, because he's missed a lot of time. Like, when he's played, he's been excellent. He's been the best player, but he's missed some time now since he's arrived at Arsenal. So it's just something that I would say to keep an eye on. But yeah, I would say a left back. And I know there was, who was it? Bertrand or something like that. And there was someone else, I think, from the French league that they were looking at as well to kind of ease the pressure and have as a left back. Because I think it kind of sucks when you have to resort to putting Cedric there or Bayern, or depending on whoever plays. And it's not their natural position. It's not really a position where I would, experiment with guys who don't play that particular position. And I would hate for someone like Saka to have to move back to left back now after, doing so well on the flank, on the wing. So that's like the worst case scenario. Like, I wouldn't do that ever again, because he's shown that he could play on the wing, and you just keep him there. And, you got Emile there and whoever else is on the wing, like Pepe for now. I think they're going to ride this Pepe thing out for a while now. As long as he's informed, they're just going to keep forcing Pepe into the starting lineup, which I don't mind at all. Like when he's really good, he's good. And something that I mentioned on my YouTube channel was he's like he's a guy when he's in form, he's really good, and when he's bad, he's like really bad. So you have to. He's a player that has to get touches from like the opening whistle. Like you have to keep him involved in the offense. And a lot of it, I'm not saying, everything has to go through him, because now you have Emil there, you have Saka, you have Gabriel, you have whomever, you have Aubameyang. So not everything has to go through him, but you have to keep him honest. Every other attack, get him involved a little bit, or every 5 minutes look for him to kind of just to have the ball at his feet so he doesn't doze off, as I like to say, on the offensive end. Because if you don't do it, then his confidence just gets shot, and you're not going to see any productivity from him. So he's a player that has to stay in the match, and I think that goal did wonders in the match previous to the United one. That goal did wonders for him, and hopefully tomorrow against Wolverhampton, he could keep it going. That's a really scary game, by the way, because Wolverhampton has struggled immensely this season, and they have too good of a roster to keep struggling like this. And if you remember, the last time they played Arsenal, Jimenez got injured when he went head-on-head with David Luiz, and he hasn't played since, and they've really missed him. So that's just something to watch for in tomorrow's match. But despite where they are, we have to get the 3 points. Like, it's not a must-win, but we should get the 3 points considering how much they're struggling and all the teams that they've lost to in the last little bit. So that's a 3 points you have to get. So like I said, left back, defensive mid, we can leave that for the summer. I mean, Guendouzi's back, so we're going to see what happens with that. The wing positions, I think, are fairly covered. So pretty much, and the goalie, like we got Matt Ryan, who's a good insurance policy. Although I know he's a little bit banged up right now, but that's a good insurance policy to have, because Runerson, I don't think he's the answer right now. I was the backup, and I'm surprised he actually didn't get loaned out. But to be fair, I don't like if you loan out Runerson, like your third goalkeeper is probably someone from the U23s, so you don't have much there as like a safety net. God forbid if Leno gets injured, and Matt Ryan has to go in net. There's really no backup. So I think we did an excellent job this transfer window of cutting like the dead weight, I guess, if you can call it that. Getting rid of all the players who we're not counting on anymore, whether that's terminating contracts or whatever it may be. Loan, and I think this is a very big loan period for Ainsley, Maitland-Niles, and Joe Willock. Like, this is huge for them going forward. If they show that they can perform, then they might be back in the Arsenal squad. But if they're not, then they're probably going to be sold this summer. I actually think that Maitland-Niles is more than likely to be sold at this point, and this is just kind of like just getting him some action, and hopefully see a rise in his price come the summertime. Whereas Willock can still have a future. He's still 21. You never know. But like, this team is set, so it's pretty much, I would say, Bernd Leno in net. You got Bayer in. Let's go with Gabriel for now, holding Tierney. Then you got Xhaka, Partey, Saka, Emil Smith-Rowe, and let's say Pepe and Aubameyang. Although you could have Aubameyang on the wing, and then Lacazette on top, and then the rest to kind of go in place. So it's pretty much like the subs are the guys that you'd expect. Like, I don't think there's going to be any like the under 23 players on the bench or anything like that. I think you pretty much have a full squad, and it is what it is, and guys are going to know the role. I feel the one guy on this team I feel really bad for is Martinelli, because he was coming into his own, picks up an injury, comes back, plays well, picks up another little injury, and then he was out for like a game or two, and now he's back, and he's kind of like lost his spot, so to say. So that's a situation kind of keep an eye on going forward. But yeah, like I said, the Wolverhampton game is not a must win, but we we should go out there and win, because they have been struggling. And I'm eager to see what Odegaard does. He didn't play too much against United. Came on as a late sub. Can't really see too much, but I expect him to have an increased role with the team. Obviously a bigger role than what he had with Real Madrid, because his role with Real Madrid was very tiny. So I look forward to seeing what he can provide the club with, at least while he's still on loan. And then, there's no option to buy at the end of the loan, so he's probably going to go back to Real Madrid, and Real Madrid will probably sell him. I don't see him in their future. So that's the pod for today. I just kind of wanted to take 20 minutes or so just to talk about the transfer window and stuff that went down. So now that it's closed, we know that the roster that is going forward is actually going to make this podcast. I was going to do it last night, then I was going to do tonight. I was going to do like a combined Arsenal Toronto Raptors, but I just decided to do Arsenal since the window's closed. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and tune in next time.